Hello and good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world, everyone. Welcome to this session at Jack 10 2020. Today, or at this session, we are going to talk about licensing and how licensing can work for your business. And in order to discuss this subject, we have an expert with us who is doing exactly that, talking about licensing, studying about licensing, giving advice about licensing, what it means, what it can do for you. So I'm very happy to welcome and introduce to you Tani Wong, who is working with the organization Licensing International. And she is in charge of Greater China and Asia and is based in Hong Kong. And she's joining us from Hong Kong today. So welcome, Tani.
Thank you, Claudia. And so good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome from Hong Kong.
Thank you, Tani. I would like, you have a presentation for us about licensing and what it means and what it can do for our businesses. So first of all, maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit more. You do a much better job than I do. And perhaps also talk a little bit about the organization you're working for.
Okay, sure. Let me first share my screen first. It will be easier, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You can see my screen, right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So first of all, actually, my sincere thanks to you and the organizer for the invitation for speaking at Jack 10 2020. Actually, it's my pleasure as well. So my name is Tani Wong. You have introduced me already, Managing Director of Licensing International, Greater China and Southeast Asia. And as you said, I'm based in Hong Kong, so a very small but dynamic city. And on behalf of the association, so I'm delighted to speak to all of you today about the topic that we at the association are very passionate about, and that is licensing. And first of all, let me do a brief introduction about our association. So started in 1985, actually we are the only global trade association for the licensing industry. Our headquarters is based in New York, and our missions are foster the growth and expansion of licensing around the world, raise the level of professionalism for licensing practitioners, as well as create greater awareness of the benefits of licensing to different types of business. How can we do this? Actually, we do this through an unparalleled network of information memberships to create impact, drive growth, and sustain excellence. And our association has more than 1,200 corporate members around the world, representing more than 40 countries. We have offices on the ground. Our headquarters is in the States, and we have offices in China, Japan, Australia, Germany, UK, and Brazil. Also, we got representatives in France, Italy, India, Nordics, as well as Russia. And since our topics today is about licensing, and let's look at what licensing means. If you search for this word in a dictionary, so licensing is the process of giving or getting permissions to have, produce, or use something that another person or company has created or owns. So if I want to illustrate it in a picture and or use an example to explain the process of licensing, and here we see the minions, which all we like and we know about it. And again, there is a t-shirt manufacturers. And if the t-shirt manufacturers ask the Universal Studios to borrow the minions and put it on a t-shirt, it becomes a minions t-shirt. And here you can see the process of licensing happens. And for this, actually the brand owner allows the t-shirt manufacturers to use the character minions on the t-shirt. And in return, the manufacturers have to pay a fee to the brand owners for borrowing the character and put it on the t-shirt, and that is we call licensing. So the brand owner here we call licensor, and the manufacturers is what we call licensees. And of course the IP, the minions, the characters is what we call the IP, intellectual properties. And by borrowing the intellectual properties, the licensee has to pay a fee to the licensor, and that is what we call royalty. So in licensing world, licensing is defined as the process of leasing a trademark or copyrighted entity, here we call IP, for use in conjunction with a product, service, or promotion. And the property could be a name, likeness, logo, character, or a combination of several of these elements. However, even for this, for licensing to be effective or to be successful, one key element is still missing here. And can you guess what? And that is emotion. And why emotion is important, and why should anyone care about it? And I want to illustrate why emotion is important by using an example. So here we have a little cutie plush for Piggy. And of course, if I want you to describe it, and you say, oh, it is a pink piggy, or it's a big plush, and that's cute, or it's a pink plush, something like that. But if you look at this picture again, you call it Peppa Pig, right? And so you call this plush not a pig, and we call the plush by her name, Peppa Pig, because you have seen the animation. You watch the animation on the TV or on YouTube channels, and you know the character, and that's why you can recognize immediately from the outlook of that character. It is Peppa Pig, and that is how emotions kicks in, because you know the story, you understand the story, and you remember the name of the characters inside the story, and that is what we say emotional attachment, and that makes licensing work. So licensing is all about storytelling. And licensing is not only limited to the examples that I quoted, like t-shirt or brush toys. And actually it works with different types of products and services, from apparel to accessories, footwear, toys, gifts, houseware, and services. And that is licensing, why licensing is regarded as one of the most powerful contemporary forms of marketing and brand extension, driving significant revenue and consumer engagement. And it is because of these two underlying factors, significant revenue and consumer engagement, that makes licensing different from other forms of marketing. And as I said, so actually a lot of things can be licensable. And the main property types for licensing will be digital brands like the game brands Mario or Pokemon, uh, Honor, Worldcraft, something like that. And then so also corporate brands can enter into licensing, like Coca-Cola in the example, or Mercedes-Benz, Lamborghini, Caterpillar, you name it. And sports here is another common type of property types. And sports here, we refer to sports events like Olympics, FIFA, UEFA, PGA Golf, or NFL, so the football. And of course, the largest product type category will be entertainment. Entertainment here, uh, whether it's movie, whether it's animation, whether it's comics, it all goes under. It all group under entertainment. And here we have Mickey Mouse as the classic examples. And then moving down, then we'll see fashion and lifestyle. So emoji, smiley. So these are the examples of fashion or lifestyle brands that is actively participating in licensing. And colleges is another small category, but actually it's growing very well. And like so, university. So it all mainly it refers to university like Harvard, Oxford, or Cambridge, or UCLA. And another form of popular like property type is celebrity. So here we quote the example as David Beckham and of course Paris Hilton or Jamie Oliver. So these are all celebrities and they are actually engaged in licensing activities or they have their own licensing program as well. And art is another like kind of non-profit type of property that is actively uh, that is very active in licensing. So here you can see the Van Gogh uh, in collaboration with Van Shoes and also some museum like the V&A or the British Museum. So all these museum or artists or designers or sculptors. So whenever they have art pieces and actually if that brand is famous enough to have huge fan space and then they can enter into licensing. And apart from the property type, so actually, as I said before, licensing is a very friendly industry. So it can go well with different types of products. Among the various kinds of products, the top product categories are apparel, toys, fashion accessories, software, video games and apps, as well as home decor. But apart from that, actually, we have top 5 fast growing categories. So the market size in terms of revenue, in terms of dollar amount, it could be very small right now, but actually the growth rate is very high. Here we have infant products, pet products is going very well, and automotive, auto parts, location-based entertainment, what we call so experience entertainment, and actually is doing very well in the past past few years. And services here like insurance or security, even property. So these are the type of service sector that is looking into licensing actually to improve their business. So far about licensing. So how big is the market in it? And in 2019, the worldwide sales revenue of licensed merchandise and services is 292.8 billion dollars, and versus 2018, so it has an increase of 4.5%. And actually, this 4.5% is the percentage increase for the industry during the 6 years that the study has been conducted. And the industry has grown in 3 consecutive years, and cumulative growth is 11.4%. And leading indicators demonstrate that licensing will remain as one of the most profitable business models that will survive through this pandemic situation, and in fact will come out even stronger after the pandemic. And viewing the licensing industry by property type, as we mentioned before, actually entertainment is the largest one, is the largest category, followed by fashion, corporate brands, sports, and publishing. And as we all enjoy entertainment and all the beloved characters that we see from the entertainment sector, it is no surprise that entertainment character entertainment leads the category for top property type worldwide, accounting for 44%, almost half of the worldwide share. And the in dollar sign is 122.4 billion US dollars in retail sales. If we look at product categories, apparel, toys, and fashion accessories continue to stand as the largest categories of merchandise and services in 2019, with both accessories and apparel showing strong above-market growth. And as I mentioned in my previous slide, both the location-based entertainment and services sectors had strong above-market growth as well, as many licensors now continue to look for non-traditional source of revenue. Research also shows that actually consumers prefer to spend their money on experiences rather than products. A geographical breakdown about the global licensing business showing that the US and Canada continue to maintain a 58% share of worldwide consumption of licensed goods and services, with close to 190 billion US dollars. Again, same as the worldwide total, up 4.5% from 2018. The South Asia Pacific, which has 6.3% growth, and North Asia represents 5% growth, and Latin America, which is 4.9% growth, regions experienced the strongest year-over-year increase in the licensing business. And these were also the strongest growth regions in 2018. And growth here were primarily driven by strong licensing expansions in countries like India, Brazil, China, Vietnam, the Philippines, Thailand, Colombia, Peru, and Indonesia. If you look at the sales revenue by country, actually the top 5 countries are United States, United Kingdom, Japan, Germany, and Hong Kong. So US is the largest single market with 161 billion US dollars in retail sales, whereas UK is number 2, and the total sales is 15.1, which is 1/10 of US numbers, and closely followed by Japan, 44.4 billions, and Germany ranks 4th, and China, Hong Kong remains the 5th. But in terms of growth percentage, actually China, Hong Kong has the highest growth rate, which is close to 10%. And also, the market size of China is almost, China and Hong Kong together is almost the same as South Asia and Pacific in total. So here, South Asia means Southeast Asia, and Pacific refers to Australia and New Zealand. If we look at if we take a closer look at Southeast Asia, you can see the country ranking will be the biggest country in terms of licensing is Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, followed by Philippines. And the numbers in brackets, you can see 23 for Singapore is the worldwide ranking of country in terms of licensing. So now we've finished about the market size and also the type of categories and also what kind of products are what kinds of merchandise are popular in the licensing market. And let's look at why licensor has to license out their brands and what are the benefits of licensing for the licensor. And first of all is and instantly and enhance and increase the brand awareness through licensing, through partnership with licensing. You have continuous new merchandise on the market and actually increase the eyeball of your property, increase the brand awareness of your property. At the same time, licensing is also now a well-established revenue stream for many IP creators. While the cost of doing a movie, or while the cost of doing business for licensing is very low, relative if you want to do a tempo movie and you have to will need a fortune actually to produce the movie and other huge investment on marketing to promote the movie. And you need to share the box office with theaters as well. And most importantly, you don't know whether you have a guarantee that the movie will be successful. Again, so active licensing actually can help to prevent infringement. For example, if you think about Angry Birds. So in many years ago, where the property was really, really, really crazy and it's really, really, really big, and especially in Asia, where we can see lots of counterfeit products. And the strategy of the licensor at that time was to actively get out to the market and to as many market as possible to license out as much product category as possible, just to try to beat it, um, the counterfeit, the pirated market. And also the fourth benefits of licensing your brand is that the licensing is also a great way to keep your brand refreshed. And especially there are so many great brands and on the market and that have lots of built-in um, equity. But these big names, maybe they have been on the market for a long time and they are somewhat tired or sort of an old brand. But by collaborating with some cool, trendy fashion house, actually it brings back energy to the brand, and and the brand itself can enjoys a renaissance because it is we introduce to the new customers, and also the brand itself can have can have a fresh look, and which in turn strengthening the brand relevance and engagement. There's lots of tons of examples on the market, like Barbie is in collaboration, and also in collaboration with fashion brands, or also you can see from my previous examples like Van Gogh, the artists, and actually so they're in collaboration with brands actually to have more to engage with more new customers as well. And one final note on this is consumer engagement, especially those of you who build your brand on social media, knowing that today the consumers, they want their brand interaction on their own terms. That means localized and more regularly licensed products promotion and events take place in a key part in creating this kind of local relevancy and everyday engagement that the fans expected. So much about the licensor, and we can look at what are the benefits for licensee, why licensees has to take, or why a manufacturers wants to take a license. And going back to the brand expansion concept, this kind of licensing efforts immediately uh, immediately brings credibility to a licensee's products based on the equity that the licensor has in that particular segment. And another benefit is just a direct shortcut to the market. You guys will be aware of what is involved in building a brand or content, as I explained before, like a temple movie. It takes a long, long time and a lot of resources and a lot of money to build a brand. There's no guarantee that the brand will be succeed. A licensee can just choose to rent the IP of an already successful brand or a property, and theoretically there's already a marketplace for that product because the brand is successful and there will be a huge fan base as well. So both the licensees and retail buyers will see the value of the product due to the expected consumer recognition and the popularity of the IP. And this is particularly a great step up in the marketplace where maybe the little company is seeking to expand the market share. So if a licensee goes out with the trendiest character or brand, which due to good timing is top of the town when the product launches, they can beat their competition or they can beat their competitor easily. And in this same context, as a licensee with the most popular brand on its products, even being a small name or being a small player in the market, those rise those rise to the most popular things in the market at a given time is a great way to open up new distribution channels and retail accounts for the licensees. And again, not only to the licensees, not only to the brand owners, why the manufacturer, why the uh, licensing also is beneficial for the retailers. So there's a lot of direct to retail deals nowadays, and DTR, what it is what we call the short term, and that means the retailers is also the licensees. And and this explains, so before actually traditionally, so when we talk about licensing 20 or 30 years ago, the retailer is not a party of the licensing agreement. Actually, the licensing agreement is between the licensor, the brand owner, and the licensee. And the retailers actually is the first customers of the licensees. But after all, we have got the product onto the shelf, and in order to sell it to the consumers, so DTR is becoming more prevalent and more important these days. And this is because, as indicated here, the retailers get the better margin they can get by cutting out the supplier, much like their private label ranges. And also, as retailers become more proactive, they want better control of what products they put on the shelf, and they want to have a guaranteed supply of products on the shelf as well. But relatively speaking, TTL is still less frequent in Asia compared with Europe and North America, as here the retail is still very often on consignment basis, and the retailers don't want to take the inventory risk, let alone the cost of production. But coming back to my point on the previous slide, retailers are always chasing after what's hot, and the licensing model of business helps make that possible. And finally, as with the licensees, the retailers also take a shortcut to popularity and awareness by renting someone else's popular brand rather than trying out to build it for themselves. And think about it, if a retailer is building its own brand, its own in-house brand, and investing over the long term to keep that brand sustainable, that can be a massive investment as well. So why not just rent out the brand and rely on someone else's marketing effort and make and making relatively modest marketing investment, because all you need to pay is the minimum guarantee or the license fee. And in comparison, when you build a brand on your own from scratch, and then jump to the next thing 6 months later, and what is hot on the market, and what is the new flavor of the month. So now we have a rough idea about licensing, the marketplace, and who are the key players. And now let's look at the reality, and which is the practical side of the licensing. And we can look at the basic elements of a license contract. And first, you have the royalty rate. And this is the rate at which you are going to rent your IP to rent out your IP to a third party. And royalty rate actually varies by types of licensing, by product category, and by region, as well as by country. But as a thumb of rule, it ranges from 5 to 20%, depending on the basis of calculation and country and industry type. So once the licensor and the licensee have agreed to a royalty rate, then the royalty rate is packed into the sales projection, and the estimated amount will come out as the amount to be paid to the licensor by the licensee over the term of the agreement. At this stage, the licensor, the brand owner, may say, okay, I like what you are proposing and the amount of money you are suggesting that I am going to receive at the end of the contract. But I want you to guarantee, or at least a portion of the projection, or otherwise it is just a number on a piece of paper. So this guarantee becomes the minimum guarantee. And normally you may say it is around 70 to 80% of your projection. And the minimum guarantee, or what we call MG, is exactly what it says. It's the minimum amount of money that the licensee have to pay to the licensor, regardless of how much sales you are making. And it reflects the opportunity cost of the licensor agreeing to tie up certain rights with you, and in a certain market and in a certain market for a period of time. So now if the licensee is doing very well and far exceeds the projection, then everyone is happy, and the licensee will proceed to pay what we call overages, which is the amount over exceeding the minimum guarantee that has earned out. Then finally, all deals are generally defined by terms, which is the duration, product, or what we call the license article. Territory is the countries that um, the, the licensed products or the merchandise is going to be sold, and also channel of distribution. So for instance, you may want to enter into contract or um, You may read a contract like 2018 to 2020 selling Mickey Mouse t-shirts in Malaysia through e-commerce channels. So this is how the licensing or the basics in the contract will read. Okay, so now we have the contract, but actually there's two very key elements that are building blocks. So before you kickstart a licensing program or a licensing project, and I have to say 3 times really important is especially to uh, establish the ownership of the IP rights. So you guys have your brands, which in many cases it could be yourself, a character, or a logo that you have created. But before you embark on a licensing project and to move forward into licensing, you really need to do some basic legal groundwork. You will need to get a lawyer locally to help you determine if you can establish ownership of your own logo and IP. And it's always possible that what you have created is effectively the same or reasonably similar to something that has been created in the past in a different market. You will have to get a lawyer to do due diligence to establish that someone else doesn't already own your logo. If you're sure that there's no one does that, no one owns your logo, and no one has something that is similar to what you have created, then you will need to register your logo as a trademark, which gives you ownership over it, and then no one can really infringe upon it. And it is also the only 100% safe way you can instruct a third party, here we call the licensee, that they can use your mark without the licensee being exposed to any infringing possibility on a pre-existing trademark. So in just one country, you've got about 30 classes of product category as determined by the WTO. And this is a universally recognized and used trademark classification system, meaning all countries adhere to it. And for consumers, for consumer product licensing, about 12 of these about 12 of these product classification categories are relevant, depending on the type of IP that you are using. And here's the catch. Technically, you have got to get all the trademark in every one of those categories for every mark, meaning we are talking about the logo here. But what if you also have a character or a face, all of which you want to protect? So you will need to trademark everything, each one in each of the classes, and then you have to do it in every single country. I have to say, if you want to trademark everything like that, so you go bankrupt first before you are entering into licensing. So in the end, very few companies will literally get all the trademark registered in all relevant category in all relevant countries. What they will do will be whether it's big or small companies. So they will try to create a hierarchy or actually to do a priority schedule in terms of going after trademarks. It ties to when and where, and there will be revenue opportunities to justify the registration. And again, you have to take into consideration about the local laws as well. In some countries, actually, the trademark laws are first come, first served, meaning that even though your properties are very popular outside of the country, but within that country, like China, so if someone like your mark see your mark overseas and they register it, actually the trademark belongs to that company. So it's very important for you to get a piece of advice from the lawyers. So for each countries, the trademark law could be very different. So after establishing ownership of the IP, and the next key thing that you need to do is you have to think about, so what does your IP, so what do you want to have your IP look on the product? And what does you want to have your IP look like, especially on a lot of licensed products? And traditionally, in our business, a licensor will provide licensees with a style guide. Indeed, all licensees will expect this. And this is how, as a brand owner, you can convey your brand's DNA in a very consistent way. The purpose of this is actually you want to convey your IP in a very meaningful and impactful way. And also, it meant to give licensee a pre-clear, pre-approved set of art, so that as long as they are applying it properly onto their products, it will generally be approved and can be sold on the market. And it also leads to your brand showing up consistently on product at retail. And nowadays, most licensors have online archive where all the core arts and supplemental arts are kept in a safe place online in the cloud, and licensees can download it themselves. And most licensors will start out with what we call a core art style guide, which then serve as the baseline for subsequent years. And as more art is developed over the life of the IP, additional style guides will come out. And licensed source creative programs will also can have seasonal packets. For example, holiday packets, Chinese New Year, Valentine's Day, Christmas, etc. in the bouquet market. And they will come out with a trend-based program, and which is especially true for those with intentions in soft lines and fashion's lifestyle space. So this is based on fashion trends in a given seasons like spring, summer, fall, winter, or whether it's denim or graffiti or pop art. So far about licensing, and of course, so when we enter into licensing, and there's also some key consideration or some key factors, and when we choose a licensing partner. Here, what we say, like a licensee, when you evaluate a licensee, you may want to look at the relevant, whether the licensee have relevant experience in the industry. So you always want to work with the industry players rather than a newcomer to the industry, because they know the industry better than you. And again, you may want to see whether the licensee has any licensing experience, whether licensee have other properties on hand, because it could be actually there are pros and cons. First of all, it could create a competition. And also, but at the same time, because the licensee have licensing experience, and so it will be very easy for you to communicate to the licensee and get them understand your brand DNA. And again, you have to look at the market size and the market share of the licensee of your potential partners, whether they are the market leaders. And of course, and you have to look at the distribution strength of the licensee. So whether they have an established license, they have an established distribution network in the market, or they work with distributors. And it is also very important to know whether the licensee has a good relationship with the retailers. And again, last but not the least, and which is reporting capabilities. Here, what we call is so whether the licensees is prompt and punctual enough to send in royalty report or sales report, so that you can track the performance of the licensee, but at the same time, the performance of your properties and how so and how well, so what amount of royalty revenues will be getting, you can be collecting from the licensees. So on the licensee side, when choosing a property, so here are some key considerations. First of all, you have to look at the brand's DNA, so demographic targets, whether it can in sync with the products that you have in mind that you want to attach with, you want to engage with the brand. And again, whether there's any competitive property on the market. Say, for example, Marvel is a superhero universe, but at the same time, and maybe so while you want to take a Marvel, but then a DC movie will be soon launching on the market. So then you have to really consider whether you want to take a Marvel one, or you want to take the DC property or the DC movie, which is going to release very soon. Again, distribution channel. Here, of course, it's not distribution of goods, but distribution of content. So where and when you will see the property. So whether you can see it on TV, you can see it on YouTube, or whether you can see it on movie, etc. And what rights do the licensor have? And here, actually, it's is also very true for some movie properties. For example, you do Marvel, and of course, the licensor grant you the rights of the different emblems, different logos of the different heroes, but actually the licensor may not have the likeness right of the celebrities. So in this case, if you want to use the celebrities' images on products, actually you have to engage in another likeness right. license agreement with the celebrities agent or the celebrities manager. And again, availability of access. Here we are talking about the style guide, whether they have the support style guide and whether the style guide is user friendly, and how often will the brand owners they refresh the style guide, because sometimes you use up all the art concepts, and then especially for apparel, actually for apparel licensees, they need to have new style guides every, not to say every quarter, but at least every season for them to have new, for them to prepare new collections. And marketing support. So how the brand owners will market the brand, will promote the brand, because if the brand is not popular enough, and there's no point for you to actually rent the IP and put it on the products. And again, so the last the last point is about the investment. So how much money the brand owners is going to um, contribute back to promote the property first of all, and also to create new content, like doing like producing a movie actually. So it involves huge investment. So also you have to look at the license source, whether they have investment behind to keep on bringing new content, new elements to refresh the property. So this is almost the end of my presentation. And here, I'll just leave with you with two slides. So first of all, it's like, so this is a recent trend. It's like the change in the retail equilibrium. Equilibrium. So it's kind of the shift. As I mentioned in my previous slide, actually before, licensing model is kind of between the licensor and licensee, and the retailers actually is the first customers. So everything, all the licensed products will go through the retailers and sell to the uh, end users. But now with consumers engagement, or with you and consumers engagement, actually licensor want to hear directly from the consumer, want to interact directly with the consumer. So as licensee, so with e-commerce, a lot of licensors, so they're doing their e-commerce, they're selling their products online and to interact with the fans. Same as the licensees. So instead of selling their products through the retailers, actually they want to have direct interaction with the fans as well, with the end users, with the consumer. So they become a seller. And so as the retailers, of course, and they have to actually, now have more competition. So not to compete with other retailers, and they're competing with the licensors and licensee, because both of them want to hear from the end user, want to engage with the consumer. So this is how the retail environment have changed over the years, especially in the past decades. And actually, this is the last slide for me today. I just want to leave all. So if anything you so uh, eh, if this is the only piece of things that you want to take away from this presentation, is change. Actually, this licensing is an ever-changing marketplace. No matter what the product categories are, what the property are, and the business is actually non-stop changing. Not because now we are in this pandemic situation, but actually it changes over the years, whether it's in retailing, in product, in property, and in consumer taste. So all we need to do is keep changing. And as I said, licensing is a dynamic business. It's friendly with all industries, and it will keep changing no matter what. And again, welcome to the licensing world. And that's the end of my presentation.
Well, thank you, Tani. That was really interesting and a lot of information. So my first question is, if someone would like to have your presentation, would you want to share it?
Yeah, sure. So I can send you a PDF copy.
Okay, that would be perfect then. If anyone in the audience would like to have Tani's presentation, please email me or email the Jack Tent team and we will send it to you. So that's one. Thank you so much.
And also, if you want to know more, just so feel free to visit our website, which is licensinginternational.org.
Yeah, I think there's, I mean, I have even received on another channel quite a number of questions for you. So
Okay.
there's a lot of interest. But first of all, can I ask you a question? You said in one of the slides that the business, the licensing business had a growth in 2020. That's what I saw. I mean, in the one of the, it says 2018, 2020, and then there was a plus for
2019.
2020. Yeah.
Mhm.
2019 was a plus and 2020 also said a plus. Or other, asked this question asked in a different way, how did the pandemic affect the licensing business?
Well, I have to say at the very beginning, actually licensing. So when the pandemic kicks in, actually we have so everything stopped. So all the business stopped, and because of the
Yeah.
lockdown, so actually it has a big impact to the to the license or to the brand owners and also to the licensees, because they do not have any channel to sell their products. And as I said, licensing is kind of a very fluid um, industry. So it works with, for example, so with the restaurant lockdown, but still we are looking for hygiene products and we are looking for face masks. And that's why you see actually now, of course, at the very beginning, when we have a shortage of masks and so nobody has masks, but then when we have enough supply of masks and people now say, oh, this is going to be a long term like kind of fashion things, and I don't want to have an ordinary mask. I want to put a Pokemon mask. So now licensing can marry with the mass industry or the what we call the health industry. And again, we can see a lot of healthy foods right now because people are staying home, and we have a lot of so people like cooking, no matter whether they enjoy it or not. But so they have to cook at home, and then you can see actually licensing comes into and on the market. It happens to have a lot of what we call the licensed sauces, like the Hershey's. So a lot of chocolate sauces, but then so and you can find a lot of ingredients and a lot of work with this kind of Hershey's chocolate flavor. So this is how licensing works. So even though, and that's why I always enjoy and I'm always very excited about the beauty of licensing is we are a very flexible industry. So if it doesn't work in that particular product category, but actually the other product category may come up.
Oh, okay, I see. And one of the questions I have here is franchising also a part of licensing?
Well, franchising is something different because franchising actually is kind of a central sourcing. And so licensing is actually we rely on the expertise of licensees like a manufacturer, like an apparel manufacturers, because we as a brand owner or the licensor as a brand owner, they're not good at manufacturing, but actually they are taking this wide move to grant the rights to the manufacturers, let t-shirt manufacturers use their expertise in making the t-shirt and put the character on it and sell it to the consumers. But whereas for franchising, actually you have to control the sourcing everything. So, but you cannot be very good at all aspects of the consumer product. So it's a little bit different. And licensing also allows the licensee to do product development because the licensee, they are good at the products. They may have a very good product and they want to put a character on it and licensee to make it become a popular product. Still, the product development relies on the licensee. But of course, the product has to be approved by the brand owners because the brand owners has to make sure the character looks right on the product.
Okay, I see. Yeah, all right. Another question was in one of the in your slides you said publishing is at 8% of the whole market. If
Right.
I think the person here
Yeah.
mentioned. Yeah. Okay. And more than art even. So can you give us some examples for publishing?
Publishing, of course, like Harry Potter. So used to be, of course, Harry Potter used to be a licensing, used to be a publishing category. so to speak. But now it becomes into an entertainment. It won't evolve into entertainment because when the brothers got it, and then they have movie and they have theme park, and so it evolved. It started as a publishing property, and it evolved into an entertainment property. And the other example could be in the very past. So publishing to publishing to entertainment could be Paddington, Paddington Bear or Winnie the Pooh. And then a very classic example about publishing is also like Eric Clark, so The Very Hungry Caterpillar.
Mm-hmm.
It's a book, and like Miffy again, so there's a lot of books, and then Jimmy Spa, so he is a writer, and he has a lot of books as well, a lot of titles, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, yeah. So these are the big ones, and I think this is me pitching in here. If I remember correctly, in Taiwan, there's this illustrator called Jimmy, right?
Jimmy Spa, yes.
Yeah,
Jimmy Liao.
exactly. Yeah, Jimmy Liao, exactly. See, he's also on many. That has also been quite successful, no?
Yes, he is actually. He's just focused on the illustrator books, and so I think he has 30 titles already, and it is translated into different languages. So,
Yeah, yeah, and I think some of his characters are also being used, being licensed, right, for bags.
yes, and also Starbucks. So they have a program with Starbucks. So
Oh,
gift
okay.
card, coffee card.
Oh, okay. So it is possible to get there, right? I mean, because obviously we in our audience we also have a lot of people who are starting to build a brand and who might be illustrators or storytellers. You know, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, it all depends. So if you want to really create a successful brand, of course, you really need to engage with your fans, especially now at in the past, we always say content is king. But here nowadays we say consumer is king because and the day is the end consumers. They consume your properties and they share their emotions, their the emotion and the feeling of your properties with their friends, and so it's just much more powerful than kind of advertising. So to in order to start with licensing, you really need to have an enough fan base. So no matter where you get it, so whether it's from on social media or whether is on the book or whatever. So you really have to create a fan base. And then once you have enough fan base, and of course with fan base, and you have to engage them as well. So sort of talk to them and interact with them because nowadays, especially with, we're all on always on online. So and kind of so if you don't interact with your fan, and there's too many properties, so many properties on the market. If you don't interact with your friends, and they will lose interest and then just change and then move to another property. So this is why engagement. We always talk about engagement in whatever aspect, whether it's on Instagram, whether if there's any online or offline interaction. So to interact with your fan base, understand and engage them, and also when you do something like in China, sometimes when like we have sort of a very famous a blogger. So he wants to write something, but he wants to, for example, he wants to write a short story. He may engage with friends and quote some questions. What do you want me to write? And then, for example, which city you want me to write? So let's do an online polling, and then so all the friends will do that. So the city with the highest vote, and I'll go there, and then to maybe to have signing. With have a signing activities. So when I first release my book, I'll do something like that, and then so the fans just go crazy because this is another kind of engagement. So you really have to engage your friends, engage your readers, and treat them like your friends.
Okay. So then basically this is a really good time. Yeah. I mean, this is also a lot of a very competitive time, but it's also a good time to create a fan base because earlier, if there's no social media and if there's no online, all of that, then it's much more difficult to create this fan base, I suppose.
Yeah, what I'm saying is actually it's much cheaper and more effective. But
Mm,
on this at the same time, actually, or on the other hand, actually, of course, it's more competitive because everyone
mm.
can be
Yeah.
a KOL or everyone can create character and put it online because the cost is very low.
Yeah. Okay, then I have one more question here. I mean, actually, I have two more questions, and I think we have enough
Okay.
time to answer both of them. One is piracy. How does piracy affect the business, especially since
Well,
you were talking about Southeast Asia?
well, to us, actually, of course, not only Southeast Asia, so China could be another kind of market, so that have this problem. But this is
Yes, of course.
something, uh, what we can do is really have to live with it because, and especially so I think, so it would be better for me to talk about China because of the country is getting stronger and wealthier. So people actually, if they know more about things and they know more about, and also actually they can watch properties easily, they can watch cartoons easily, and that's why they know the brands. And they actually now they are looking for authentic brands. So
Hmm.
when the people they are getting more sort of wealthy, and they want to improve uh, their living standards. So they're looking for good brands because they think that the authentic brands will bring them the credibility and also the safety. Because now, especially in China, so product safety is very important. So
Hmm.
uh, we this is how we look at the thing, and also actually the government is doing a very big uh, project on protecting the brand. So, as for example, want to when you want to sell your products online, or when you want to enter a shopping mall, actually the shopping mall, the owners or the retailers, they will ask you for a sort of a certificate to prove that so your products are legitimate. Otherwise, you will be easily, so you cannot actually sell your products in the shopping mall or at the retailers, at the established retailers, so to speak. But of course, for some mom and pops, and it is kind of difficult to eliminate. And what we do is we really have to live with it. But as I say, actually, the consumer segment or the consumer mentality, they has changed because they actually, it is from them. They now they don't want to have counterfeit products, and they are more uh,
Hmm.
open to authentic products. And at the same time, and of course, there's still some sort of what we call the minority or the less privileged people. And at the end of the day, these people then don't care about brands, and they will
Mm.
ultimately, whether you get rid of all these pirated products, they will not be your consumer, they will not be your end user.
Mm. Okay.
So all we need to do is really uh, to focus on our work and do a good job, and then so to launch good products for consumers
Mm.
and to engage the fans.
Yeah, but also, I mean, I guess we also have to push our governments, right? Or the governments in the respective countries to help with laws and enforce the laws against copyright infringement.
Right, correct.
Mm. Okay. And then one more last question, I promise, is about the brands within Southeast Asia. So, are there a lot of brands? Of course, we know Singapore's probably the most, how do you say? Of course, Singapore, Hong Kong, China, very advanced, and yeah, very advanced in uh, developing properties. But Indonesia, I know there's Indofood, for instance, which is a big brand all over the world. But is there a lot of exchange, or do we see a lot of Malaysian brands being um, licensed in Indonesia or in Vietnam or Vietnamese in other Southeast Asian countries?
I would say Southeast Asian countries, so kind of, so well, as a whole, is it's a big region, but actually, so there's big difference, especially in terms of cultural difference. So very country by country, and sometimes, like take Singapore and as an example. So Singapore, for example, licensing market is more on distributed, but they don't have a lot of content. So they consume content. So they like Western properties like Disney, Universal, or Viacom. So actually, they prefer to have Western properties rather than local properties. And then in terms of licensing, actually, the licensees, they are not manufacturers, they are importers, they are distributors, they import goods from other licensees from other countries. Whereas in terms of local content production, maybe Indonesia has some, and Philippines has their own, Malaysia has their own, and Malaysia is the one could be, if it is a Muslim thing, so it cannot travel throughout the world. So I think this is a kind of cultural limitation. The only one that I can see, like um, I remember, so for Malaysia, so to speak, so because of this culture, like Upin maybe. So this is a Malaysian property, so very popular in Malaysia, but then it is very difficult for the property to travel outside of the country, and because of that kind of religion limitations. Whereas
Mm.
the other examples that I can see, which is quite popular and quite successful, actually is coming from Hong Kong, a BDUC. It's a yellow rubber duck, so to speak. So the yellow rubber duck is very successful in Thailand. Of course, it's very successful in China. It originated in Hong Kong. And it has, Taiwan is a little bit different because Taiwan is kind of very Japanese oriented. And it is quite popular in in the Philippines, and I think bee duck, so that yellow rubber duck, actually is doing very well in Thailand as well. I'm not sure about the Indonesian market, but kind of a little bit of it.
Mm.
But
Okay.
we'll see. And actually for our licensing show in China, so we see actually whether it's MBEC or actually Indonesian. So they are at this Southeast Asian pavilion. So we have in Hong Kong the licensing show. We see Thailand pavilion, and we can see Malaysian pavilion, and also the Indonesian pavilion or Taiwan pavilion. And actually, we can see some successful case from not from Indonesia, but then from Malaysia, and they have properties entering China as well.
Okay. Wow,
And
that's really
maybe
interesting.
yeah, and so maybe just a little bit of advertising as well. Actually, for Asia, I have to say China is the only country nowadays that allow so physical trade shows where everything so like us, so everything is goes online. But last month there are two licensing show in China already, and I was very successful because actually people, especially Asians, so we are we're hungry for getting new IPs, meeting people, and that's why, if possible, next year, if there's if the licensing show, of course, will still go on in China, the physical show. So if you guys can travel to China, feel free, because actually the China companies, they are looking for brands and they're hungry about brands.
Okay, that's something to really keep in mind. And maybe next year at Jack Tent, we will also have a licensing part if we can have a real exhibition, and hopefully
Sure.
you will be able to join us there as well, and
Yeah,
maybe bring
I'll
some
be happy
Chinese
to help as well.
companies. Okay.
Sure. Actually, a lot of China companies, they're interested in exploring the Indonesian market.
Okay, that's good news. So yeah, unfortunately, we are running out of time. So thank you so much, Tani. It was a real pleasure to talk to you. I think you had some very interesting and very insightful content to share with the audience today. And as you see, there were quite a number of questions. So I'm sure people were very happy. We're looking forward to your presentation. And anyone who would like the presentation, please just write to us. We will send it to you. And apart from that, yes. So thanks also for the good tips, especially for the smaller IP developers. Create a fan base, create a fan base. So
Right.
that's, I hear you, one of your mantras.
Thank you.
Okay, Tani, thank you so much.
Mhm.
And
Thank
goodbye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you for your time. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have you stopped recording? No.
Informasi terkini menjadi sumber referensi dan inspirasi di setiap aktivitas. Melalui news video portal, segala informasi dapat disajikan cepat, akurat, dan lengkap. Dengan kekuatan teknologi digital, Maidcom.id hadir dengan berita pilihan yang dikemas secara menarik. Maidcom.id, digitally inspire people.
Berharga kalau bersama saya.
15 Minutes setiap Rabu jam 6 sore lewat 45 menit. Bisa sama, sudut pandang boleh beda. Mediaindonesia.com, views and news.
Hai.
Dalam setiap denyut kota, saya selalu menjadi saksinya. Disiarkan lebih dari 20 televisi jaringan Jawa Pos Group. Jawa Pos TV, paling Indonesia.
We're done now, are we?
Dalam setiap denyut kota, saya selalu menjadi saksinya. Disiarkan lebih dari 20 televisi jaringan Jawa Pos Group. Jawa Pos TV, paling Indonesia. Kebebasan pers dan gelombang era digital menghadirkan ribuan bahkan jutaan informasi dan data setiap harinya. Beragam data dan informasi berserak di berbagai tempat seiring dengan perubahan dunia yang bergerak begitu cepat. Media-media baru pun bermunculan, namun kualitas informasi seolah tak lagi menjadi prioritas. Bahkan tak sedikit yang abai pada etika jurnalisme. Untuk menjawab tantangan itu, Kata Data hadir sejak April 2012 sebagai portal media di bidang ekonomi dan bisnis. Beragam sektor diulas mulai dari finansial, energi, pangan, hingga industri kreatif dan digital. Artikel mendalam dan komprehensif dengan sajian infografik yang menarik menjadi karakter utama dari Kata Data. Kata Data berikhtiar untuk terus menyajikan beragam informasi berkualitas untuk kemajuan negeri dan untuk kepentingan bisnis Anda. Kami percaya demokrasi yang sehat tumbuh dari kehadiran informasi dan data yang akurat.
Kalau bicara pakai data.
Hidup terlalu pendek untuk membiarkan pemikiran-pemikiranmu, ide-idemu terdiam begitu saja. Untuk berubah, kita perlu melangkah. Dan langkah itu lahir dari sebuah inspirasi. Republika, start moving.